Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Weekly Wrap, where we go over a bunch of different topics, maybe get into a personal segment or two. And yeah, that's how we roll on Saturdays. But before we get into the show, I want you to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever the hell you get your podcasts. Please subscribe. I really freaking appreciate it. So, a lot of late breaking news that happened yesterday was sort of perfect for this podcast. Trump decided to go to war with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and he also attacked Thomas Massie for the millionth time. He treats Thomas Massie the way I treat a bunch of my ex girlfriends. I just start randomly attacking them online, just out of the blue for no apparent reason. You know, I criticize them for getting with like their new partner. That's pretty much what Trump did. I've done the same thing in all fairness. Be like, oh yeah, Natalie, you got a new boyfriend. What's he in jail? And then he turns out to be in jail, and it's like, okay. No offense, Natalie, if you're listening, but that's what Trump does. Trump attacks Thomas Massie, and then he criticized him for getting like remarried because Massie, his wife passed away last year, and then Massie had the gall of getting remarried. He's not like Thomas. It's not like Thomas Massie's like 85. I think he's like in his 40s or 50s. It's totally appropriate for him to remarry. And Trump's like, how dare you get remarried? Like I said, I get it. I've done the same thing. It's like, how dare you, Anna, get a new boy? I thought I was your untrue love. And then she's like, yeah, then why'd you dump me? I'm just like, okay, let's not get defensive here. So anyway, I want to talk about that. So regarding, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Trump, sort of for seemingly no reason, although there did turn out to be a reason, Trump last night, like 8:31, I think Pacific time, but maybe Eastern, I'm not quite sure. He puts out one of these big, ridiculous Truth Social posts, and I'm going to read you some of it, not all of it, because it's a pretty long post. By the way, one of the worst things about Trump being on Truth Social instead of X is, I guess there's no character limit on Truth Social. So Trump feels like he can post these like essay long posts and expects us all to read it. I think it was good for Trump that X had a character limit because I think it helped him condense. Trump doesn't have to condense now on Truth Social, so now he writes these ridiculous long boomer posts, like he's my dad, sending me like a text message. It's sort of interesting. But this is what he said. I am withdrawing my support and endorsement of Congresswoman, in quotes, Marjorie Taylor Greene of the great state of Georgia. Over the past few weeks, despite my creating record achievements for our country, including a total and complete victory on the shutdown, closed borders, low taxes, no men and women's sports, or transgender for everyone. That's so funny. Ending DEI, stopping Biden's record-setting inflation, biggest regulation cuts in history, stopping 8 wars, rebuilding our military, being respected by every country in the world, as opposed to being the laughingstock that we were just 12 months ago, having trillions of dollars. Bro just keeps going on it all. He has to brag about himself before he gets into the meat. All I see is wacky Marjorie do is complain, complain, complain. It seemed it all began when I sent her a poll stating she should not run for senator or governor. And again, he goes on and on and on. So basically, Trump accuses her of being critical of him because Trump told Marjorie that she shouldn't, run for state office either as, in Senate or the governor of Georgia. So a couple of things. I don't think that's the reason. The reason is because Marjorie, Marjorie has said that she wants all the Epstein files to be released. And she should. This whole Epstein stuff is ridiculous. Okay. And I think I'll play a clip now. I believe I have it, but I'm going to play a clip of what she said about the Epstein files. And I think this is what really got Trump sort of riled up.
These women have been waiting, some of them for decades. I talked to several victims that were raped by Jeffrey Epstein back in the 90s. And so this is information that has needed to come out for a very long time. And the American people have demanded it. And so the American people deserve to see transparency from their government. Rich, powerful people should not be protected. That is completely wrong. And it's a message to victims everywhere, victims of rape, human trafficking, and children who are trapped in terrible situations, that the government will not protect the predators, that we will work hard to protect the victims.
So Marjorie has been clear that we need to release all the Epstein information, which is like super reasonable. And the Trump administration has totally mishandled this Epstein crap. It's like, why is Trump calling it a hoax? Why is the administration seemingly so against releasing all the information? I mean, remember how this all started. In all fairness, Trump didn't really campaign on releasing the Epstein files, but certainly his surrogates and people associated with him, they used the issue as a way to get votes. They used the Epstein situation as an example of corrupt deep state power. And essentially the argument was, hey, one of the benefits to electing Donald Trump back into the White House is we're going to release all the information regarding the deep state, including the Epstein files. That was sort of the pitch. And Trump gets back into office, and he starts releasing some information about other topics like MLK, JFK files. It's not exactly clear if they even released all the information relating to those topics, but they released some information. But then when it comes to the Epstein crap, they say they're going to release information because, people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel had talked about that. Pam Bondi says she has the files on her desk. I don't know how she was able to make room, considering all the makeup she must have on that desk. That's all Pam Bondi seems to be doing these days, is trying to overcompensate for her aging, but putting on, 10,000 pounds of makeup on her face so she can look pretty on Fox News. But let's not even get into that. But then she says, oh, actually, they weren't on my desk because they don't exist. She went from the files are on my desk to they don't exist. Sort of incredible if you think about it. And then Kash Patel and Dan Bongino come out and they release a statement. The FBI or someone in the Trump administration, some agency, releases a statement saying that there's nothing there. It's like, what? What do you mean there's nothing there? Clearly there is something there. And then Trump starts saying it's a hoax. It's a hoax. And the administration gets very defensive. And it's like, what's going on here? Now, to get back to Marjorie Taylor Greene, I do think she has been more critical of the Trump administration over the last few months, and I think she's been largely correct in her criticism. She's made the point that, Trump ran on America First, but he hasn't really been implementing a lot of his America First policies. I think that's a fair statement. I mean, if you look at Trump's core campaign promises, lowering inflation, that's a failure. He's getting us out of Ukraine, that's a failure. Securing the border, that's been a success. He has secured the border. Mass deportations, mostly a failure. I mean, the deportations have been very high profile, but the actual numbers of the deportations are not that dramatically more than they were during the Biden administration. They're much more public about it. They make a show about it for political reasons, but the actual numbers are not that much different. Trump campaigned also, I mean, we got to be honest about this. He campaigned on using tariff policy as a way to sort of revitalize our industrial base, but for the most part, he's just been using tariffs as a way to punish countries that buy Russian oil. That's why he put tariffs on India, because, oh my God, India buys Russian oil. Well, they shouldn't be able to buy Russian oil because Russia's in war with Ukraine. It's like, again, I thought we weren't supposed to really give a shit about that war. But I guess we do. So Marjorie Taylor Greene's been making these type of points in a very, in the way she does it. She can be pretty bombastic herself, in all fairness, but these are, I think, correct points. And then probably the biggest sin of them all is she's been very against this whole Israel first crowd. Okay. The Israel firsters, people like Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, all these retards. Pardon my French. But that's the whole point of America First, is we have to put America first, not Israel first. But you have a lot of people in the conservative movement and the establishment who just love Israel and think that even if Israel's interests start to collide against U.S. interests, we should still go with Israel's interests and not ours. You have a lot of people like that. I mean, you had a woman in the Trump administration, I forget which position, said that we were the greatest country in the world aside from Israel. It's like, what? And the reason why I'm bringing, I could hear some people like, why are you talking about Israel? Why are you talking about it? It's like, well, there are reasons to suspect that Epstein had connections to Mossad. Certainly, Ghislaine Maxwell's family had connections to Israel. I mean, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, I believe, basically had a state funeral in Israel. That's a little weird. It's never been clear how Jeffrey Epstein got all his money, and how a college dropout later became a professor. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, the whole Epstein stuff is very weird. And there may be foreign connections, but we don't really know because the Trump administration has sort of resisted releasing more info on Epstein. And this cannot be understated how much of a political failure this has been. If you look at Trump's approval rating, when it really started to dip was two things. The Iran strikes, because again, you can't campaign for basically 10 years that you're not going to start any new wars, and you're the only president during your first term not to start any new wars, then start a war with Iran as soon as you get back into office. You just can't do that without political consequences. I'm sorry. Even if you think the strikes were justified, again, if you posture yourself as the anti-war guy for 10 years, you can't just then start a war on behalf of another country, Israel, and expect no blowback from the public. Of course there was going to be blowback, particularly from the younger, more minority swing voters that shifted towards Trump. They weren't going to be happy with that. But the second thing that happened that also seemingly caused Trump's approval rating to dip was his administration's handling of the Epstein files. And let's be honest, it makes Trump look guilty. It makes it look like the reason the administration's been trying to stonewall Congress and reporters is because that Trump's somehow implicated in the files. Now, I don't believe that. And that sort of gets us into the new released Epstein stuff that came out this week. So many people on the left, the online left, like idiots like Kyle Kulinski, CNN, MSNBC, they're talking about these new Epstein emails, and actually these emails, if anything, sort of vindicate that Trump had nothing to do with anything. They're totally misrepresenting the findings. But it just makes the administration look so guilty. And then Trump keeps calling it a hoax. Now, in all fairness, and I'm going to get into that in a second, I do think as the Epstein files pertain to him, I do think it is a hoax that the Democrats are trying to perpetrate on Trump. I don't think there's any question about that. As it comes to Trump, it is a hoax. Be very clear about that. But the idea that there's no suspicion of this being a blackmail operation, that there aren't, many victims, and that there wasn't a major sex trafficking operation going on with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, that's not a hoax. Doesn't mean that he was working for Israel. Although, again, the fact that you have Ben Shapiro saying that Marjorie Taylor Greene is trying to destroy the Trump administration. It's like, why? Because she wants the Epstein files to be released? Why do you care, Ben? That makes Ben sound like that Trump is implicated in the files. Or, probably more likely, that means he knows or has an idea that maybe Israel is implicated in the files. I don't know. Could be. I mean, look, we all know that Israel doesn't really care about the well-being of kids. I mean, let's be honest. Just look at Gaza. I don't think Israel really cares about the well-being of children. If we're just being honest, folks. Let's not get into that, but just something to think about. I don't think it's necessarily beyond imagination that Israel wouldn't necessarily care about the well-being of children, as long as it benefited Israel. Okay. Let's just be honest, folks. But Ben seems to think that there's something there that's going to be bad for the administration. Otherwise, I don't know why he'd be attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene. When all she has said recently is, I think we should have total transparency over these files. And look, and just to address Trump's point about how he didn't want to endorse her to run for the Senate of Georgia or governor, in all fairness, I could understand that Marjorie Taylor Greene probably wouldn't be the best candidate for those two positions. But at the same time, she does represent America first much more than. I mean, you have Trump attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, and then he defends Lindsey Graham. What the fuck? You're going to defend Lindsey Graham, who's a gay neocon retard, but then you're going to go after Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene? What? That just makes Trump look so stupid. It makes him look like a political hack. And again, the whole handling of the Epstein file has been a catastrophe for the administration. It makes the way the Nixon administration handled Watergate look good. Let's be honest. It's just unfortunate that it's come to this. But in all fairness to Trump, and I'm going to get into this now, he's not totally wrong to say that the Epstein files are a hoax, at least as it pertains to him. So let's get into that part of it.